Good morning. Welcome to Forgiveness Fridays. I am your host, Sylvia McIntosh. I am a certified fearless life coach and a certified fearless trainer, and I welcome you to this community to help heal the holes in the souls of humanity through forgiveness. First, I need to let you know this is a pre-recorded video that I am not actually live due to my lack of tech savvy and some changes Facebook has made. I can no longer figure out how to download the Facebook Live videos that I make on my Make Your Life Your Own Facebook page. So I am making them in a different way and pre-recording them and having them go live at 9 o'clock on Friday mornings when I wish I was live. However, what is still live is the Forgiveness Fridays Zoom chat, which happens at 9:30 on Friday mornings Eastern Time. If you don't already have that invitation and would like to join that conversation, share your favorite forgiveness tools and talk about how forgiveness shows up in your life, we would love to have you join our little group. So either PM me or email me so I can send you that invitation, and then you can join us for that conversation at 9:30. So here we are talking about forgiveness, how that shows up in our daily lives and why it's important. And so I'd like to start by reviewing our definition of forgiveness for our purposes in this group. And I have forgiveness defined as release of an event or comment so it can stay in the past where it really is. And the idea of releasing the event has to do with releasing all of the energy that goes with the frustration or the anger or the hurt that may have happened at that time. Because if we are still remembering that and reliving that, then we're no longer in the present moment. We are back in the past. We are adding salt to the wound. We aren't making progress. And what forgiveness can do is allow us to stay in the present moment, move forward from where we are. And if there is some healing or resolution that needs to take place, by being willing to do some forgiveness work, then we can be open to what some of those solutions might be. So in addition to all of the work of Rhonda Britton's that I do and share and love and live, and those are the exercises that I have used here. And if you would like to see what exercises we have done, then once again, join the email list so that I can send you the PDFs of those exercises. But I also love reading other things. And I have just been devouring books during the shut-in right now since I'm not working. Get to stay home. I have time to read. And I've also been in my car a lot more lately because I have been able to take care of some things up in Dayton. So that gets me in the car, which means I'm listening to books on tape, which is also, well, I should say recorded books. It's not on tape, it's on CD. But I love listening to books that way. And one of my favorite people to listen to are books by Malcolm Gladwell because he reads his own books. And not only does he just have this wonderful, lovely voice, so I really love listening to him, but I love it when an author reads their own books because then when I reread the book to myself later, I have their voice in my head, and then I feel like I'm really understanding the inflection that they were thinking when they wrote it. So the last book that I listened to, and as soon as I listened to it once, I had to listen to it again, was David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants. Fantastic book. The premise has to do with the story of David and Goliath from the Bible. David being the shepherd boy who kills the gigantic, extremely tall, extremely strong, extremely experienced warrior with all of his weapons and his armor, and this little shepherd boy comes running at him with no armor, and the only weapon he has is a slingshot, and he kills the giant. And talking about how that worked, how that happened, what assumptions Goliath was making that allowed him to see David but not recognize that he was a threat, and how David could see Goliath, who everyone around him thought was an undefeatable threat, as not being either. Not being a threat, not being undefeatable, and David therefore is able to defeat him. And he talks about a lot of things in the book, but here's what stood out to me because of the work I've been doing on forgiveness. And this is in the the book is divided into 3 sections, and this is in the 3rd section, which he has subtitled. I should have looked that up first. He has section 3, part 3, listed as the limits of power. And he starts with 2 stories in this 3rd section, both about parents who have lost children to murder, have had children murdered. The first one is a man in California whose daughter Kimber is murdered, and how Kimber's dad, Mr. Reynolds, Mike Reynolds, takes a promise he makes on his daughter's deathbed to keep this kind of event from being able to happen again. And from that, he then is instrumental in getting the 3 strikes law passed in California that was there for 20 years. 3rd time you show up in court, doesn't matter what the offense is, if it's your 3rd time, you get locked up for the rest of your life for 25 years. So his response to his daughter's murder was to get laws passed that were stricter. And then he also talks about Wilma Dirksen, whose daughter was intercepted on her way home from school up in Canada on a very cold day and was captured and basically frozen to death. And Wilma Dirksen is Mennonite. So I want to read just a few of the passages about Wilma Dirksen and her approach to dealing with the death of her daughter. So is Wilma Dirksen more or less of a hero than Mike Reynolds? It is tempting to ask that question, but it is not right. Each acted out of the best of intentions and chose a deeply courageous path. The difference between the two was that they felt differently about what could be accomplished through the use of power. The Dirksens fought every instinct they had as parents to strike back because they were unsure of what that would accomplish. They were not convinced of the power of giants. They grew up in the Mennonite religious tradition. The Mennonites are pacifists and outsiders. And then skipping over some, a quote from Wilma Dirksen is, "I was taught that there was an alternative way to deal with injustice." End quote. To the Mennonites, forgiveness is a religious imperative. Forgive those who trespass against you. But it is also a very practical strategy based on the belief that there are profound limits to what the formal mechanisms of retribution can accomplish. So this idea that forgiveness is a powerful tool in bringing peace to your life and healing to a terrible situation really jumped out at me. So I'm going to jump a few more pages here. Wilma Dirksen could have been Mike Reynolds. She could have started her own version of 3 strikes. She chose not to. And quoting Wilma, Mrs. Dirksen, "It would have been easier in the beginning, but then it would have gotten harder. I think I would have lost Cliff," that's her husband. "I think I would have lost my children. In some ways, I would be doing to others what he did to Candace." End quote. And this really struck me. There's also I can't remember any of the names now, but several years ago, there was a man who went to an Amish village and opened fire. He captured a bunch of the little girls, locked them in a schoolroom, and then he opened fire on them before killing himself. And the immediate Amish reaction was to forgive this man and embrace his mother, who was shocked and devastated that her son would behave like this. But part of her healing in trying to figure out what happened with her son and how he could have done something was really fed and supported by the Amish community her son had injured, because they lived forgiveness. they believe forgiveness is the most powerful way to deal with issues in other people. And one of the things we talk about in Fearless Living is intention. And my intention for the last several years, I have several intentions. Sometimes I'll come up with smaller ones for different days or different events, but my overarching intention is still, I am willing to practice cherishing innocence in myself and others. And this is so important to me because when I remember that people who are aggravated or crabby or unpleasant probably have something going on, and it may have nothing to do with me. I just happen to be the one in front of them because I know how often I have behaved badly in public, or I have responded to someone in a way that had very little or nothing to do with what they were doing, but it was because they triggered something in me that I hadn't resolved. So it's been really helpful to me to cherish that innocence, and cherishing that innocence also includes forgiveness. So, story about myself, recent event here. I have a mimosa tree that I planted in my front yard, I think about 3 years ago now. And it was growing so beautifully. It had split into a nice Y at a height that I thought would be tall enough for this tree to be able to continue to grow where it is between the street and the sidewalk, so that it's not going to be a problem for cars that are trying to drive by or park, and it's not going to be a problem for passersby who are trying to walk on the sidewalk. But I came home one day this past week, and someone had ripped my tree. They had taken the smaller part of the Y and ripped it off and stripped the bark almost all the way down. And I know where part of that other branch ended up because I saw it later on top of a car at the end of the block. And I know that was part of that branch because it had the piece of bark that had been ripped off that matched my tree. And I was so angry and hurt and just frustrated when I first saw that my first response was, well, I hope whoever ripped that tree off, I hope ripped apart my tree, I hope someone rips your arm off and you can feel what that feels like. And as soon as I had that thought, my next thought was, that's not a very forgiving approach to this, and you keep leading a discussion on forgiveness every Friday morning, and you have been since the beginning of May. So, what is it you really want to think right now? How do you really want to be right now? So I have to forgive that. I have to let it go. I don't understand the joy of destroying property like that, or destroying plants or damaging plants. I see kids do it at school all the time. There are trees in the yard and they go out and hang on them and break off branches, and I don't know why. I mean, why is it so much fun to destroy things? And so the conclusion I had to come to was, I don't understand the process that finds joy in destroying things that aren't mine. I mean, yeah, I love to break ice in the wintertime when it freezes on the pond or on a puddle, because I love the sound of the way it breaks, because it sounds like breaking glass, and yet it's harmless. And if I have something I'm done with, it's kind of fun sometimes to set it on fire. Or if I've broken a dish, then maybe I'll smash it up the rest of the way. But those are my things. I'm destroying my own property. I don't do that to other people's property. And so I don't understand the process. I don't have to understand the process. But what I can remember is, somehow they think doing this will meet a need that they have that they don't know how to get met. And so this is where their innocence comes in. Once again, it has to do with coping skills. Are we taught how to deal with our frustration? No, most people are not. Are we taught how to get along with other people? No, not so much anymore. Even what used to be common everyday manners, saying please and thank you, holding the door for people, saying Mr. and Mrs. instead of calling everybody by their first name, saying yes and no instead of uh-huh or yeah or mm-mm. We don't teach that anymore. And somehow some of those manners have also become labeled as being racist or exclusionary. So I'm not quite sure how to deal with that. The idea of manners to me has to do with making it easier to get along with people, especially people we don't know. If we have a common set of behaviors on how to treat people, then it lowers the risk of offending someone right away. And yet I also recognize that different cultures have different manners. In America, we often sit with our legs crossed and even do it so that the bottoms of our shoes show, because that's not an issue here in America. But I know that in some Middle Eastern countries, particularly I believe the Muslim countries, showing the bottom of your shoe to another person is an insult. So having manners, finding out what the manners are when you're going somewhere else, I think is important. Recognizing that we have differences about what might be considered good behavior, and being able to forgive, overlook, whatever the word is, the ignorance of someone coming to us who may have different training, no training, and not hold it against them as being bad because they do differently. I think that's still a big part of forgiveness. So I didn't write out a letter, but I did work through the process of naming the steps that I was angered and hurt and frustrated about, and forgiving each one. Why would you destroy my property? I forgive you. What makes you think it's okay to come in and just rip people's plants apart? I forgive you. Does it matter to you that I planted this tree and love this tree, as opposed to it being a weed that I let grow? I forgive you. Did you get something out of it? I hope so. So that was my major forgiveness thing this week, was forgiving the person who destroyed my tree. Well, damaged my tree. I don't know yet that it's been destroyed. It may still, the bark will probably heal. And I can look into whether or not there's something I need to do to help the tree rebalance itself, because it was a Y. So one side's been ripped off, so now it's leaning to the other side. But I can look into that. So that was my thing. I want to thank you for being a part of this community to heal the holes in the souls of humanity. I hope very much that you will join me at 9:30 Eastern Time on Friday mornings in our Forgiveness Friday Zoom chat. If you don't already have that information, then please either PM me here on Facebook or send me a quick email so I can send you an invitation to that. And thank you for joining this community. I am Sylvia McIntosh with Make Your Life Your Own Life Coaching. Have a great week, and I look forward to hearing how forgiveness is supporting you as you move forward in your life.